are other related problems as well, like which are recently being evaluated. One is the robustness of RAG to external documents. So the external documents that are used in a RAG setting could have noise in different forms. There could be noise or there could be contradictions. So like this paper called RGB essentially like created a data set of 4 different types where a retrieval augmented system could fail because of some problem in the retriever. So the first one is basically the external documents could contain noise. The second case is of negative rejection, in which all the external documents are contain noise. So essentially the model should learn to ignore that information. The third is in which the external information is spread out across different documents, and we expect the model to essentially be able to combine information across these multiple documents. And this could even scale up to like multiple sources as well. And there is the question of counterfactual robustness, in which the model basically, the documents are either purposely, there are adversarial documents which are inserted or which are even contradictory to general or like actual retrieved text. Then like this is what when we were discussing in the lab, like there are lots of future problems which could be worked this, and there is lots of opportunity, especially now, because LLMs, especially the space of LLMs has become there are lots of people working on it, and there are lots of interesting problems as well, and especially even people from NLP, even from backgrounds of IR, both, and assuming like with good ML DL expertise, there are lots of interesting problems to take on. So one specific problem is basically checking the effect of conflicting or contradictory information. This one example is basically in a legal setting, or it could be for controversial topics, and something like how do we generate arguments by retrieving conflicting evidence. So, and that conflicting evidence could appear in the form of like generally in debate settings in which you have a controversial topic. Should there be stringent gun laws? And there could be arguments which are for or against, and we could have evidence which is contradictory or evidence which is conflicting to each other, generate some text which basically takes into consideration both. There are lots of sub problems here. One is that you also have to retrieve all the relevant arguments, and then basically be able to understand all of those arguments, plus be able to weigh which argument has more strength as compared to the other, and then generate a verdict over it. There is a lot of work on using them in legal settings as well, but it would be very risky as of now to use them legal settings. This could be used as a supporting device as well. But I think it's worth at least discussing. That is, we know that in the vanilla setting, the LLMs, if we have a pre-training phase, which is the longest phase, then there's a fine-tuning phase, and then there's an optionally of an RLHF phase. And the pre-training phase has a lot of training data, and most of the training data, except for in the last few months, a lot of training data has been obtained via either like text whose license are not applicable. And so the question is like, can we move all of this pre-training data to retrieval and then be able to train a model just using retrieval augmented setting? So essentially, we are trying to minimize how much we provide in the pre-training data and move all of them to the retriever and see how that system performs. Then there is questions of catastrophic forgetting, like when we are using retrieval, like when to use retrieval. Do we use it at pre-training as versus at fine-tuning? Using retrieval during pre-training has several advantages and several drawbacks as well. So one major benefit is improved language modeling, as the model can learn from a diverse set of documents. But this could also lead to enhanced performance on downstream tasks, especially when coupled with further fine-tuning. However, the drawbacks include increased computational overhead and the potential need for diverse retrieval data. And on the other hand, incorporating retrieval only during fine-tuning has its own set of pros and cons. The benefits generally include like you have a focused way to adapt your model to a particular task, and you require less extensive annotated data. However, a significant drawback is basically the possibility of catastrophic forgetting of pre-training data. So a lot of pre-training capabilities learned could be forgotten And this is yet to be evaluated. So this remains an open question. And so the question is essentially, how can a model avoid catastrophic forgetting after retrieval augmented pre-training? And also, to what extent would fine-tuning with retrieval affect capabilities gathered during pre-training using retrieval augmented generation during pre-training itself? The other is basically improving the retrieval setup. So most retrieval components essentially use BM25 without re-ranking, leading to less accurate retrieval. And so can we come up with better, if we use better re-rankers, how would that affect our whole RAG pipeline? Besides, there's a lack of diverse knowledge sources. Most of the RAG approaches essentially use Wikipedia, which basically limits RAG's applicability to domain-specific problems. So one interesting set of use cases would be to pick a particular domain and then use data sets or knowledge sources of that particular domain as retrieval sources, and then see how that plays as compared to using generic knowledge sources like Wikipedia. And we saw this previous approach, replug, and in which they try to correct for the misalignment between the objective of the retriever and the generator. Can we explore further more approaches which basically try to minimize the objective of retriever and the generator? So most retrievers retrieve information in order to use, not necessarily in order to improve subsequent generation capabilities. How can we align both of those objectives? One is the robustness against noisy documents, noisy evidence. We discussed conditional retrieval also. In the conditional retrieval case, many approaches used consistency detection, that is prompting the LLMs multiple times, either through paraphrases or gathering multiple responses through temperature sampling them. And those approaches can be very costly. They might not be really scalable. Instead, a lot of people have applied rule-based approaches, like we saw the approach of using a rule of whether an entity is a long tail entity or an entity of the head of the distribution. Those rule-based approaches, while they are cost effective, they are not really scalable. How can we design better ways basically to recognize the need for retrieval, which balances both without compromising on latency and accuracy? And there is a lack of resources for tool augmentation, and this is also because tool augmentation largely depends on the setting in which it's applied. There's recently a lot being done, and there's lots of potential applications here. For example, one simple use case would be like data sets like Tool Alpaca provide multi-turn capabilities with single tool capabilities. Tool Bench provides access to 16,000 API calls with multi-tool capabilities, but it's single turn. Can we make resources which have multi-turn as well as multi-tool capabilities? And can we make them in a natural way as well? That is, rather than generating data by feeding API descriptions, which would be a little unnatural, can we gather external data which is already tool augmented, like in a natural setting, and then use that as training data? Two related questions. What would be the best way to self-instruct a corpus of both multi-turn conversations and multi-tool capability? Can we train an effective generator on such a corpus to perform at par with large closed source models, like with function calling features like GPT-4? That is it for the whole presentations. Are there any questions or anything related to the research questions which want to discuss? Then please feel free to raise your hand or send in the chat. Yeah, and I'll stop recording as well.